a homeless man is arrested for vagrancy and badly injured in the process. A man caught shoplifting is fined $450, but unable to pay, he's thrown in a cell. Another man steals from a department store, runs from the cops, and gets a draconian sentence. Each of these people violated different statutes and faced different charges, but you might say they were all guilty of the same crime: poverty. During my years of wrongful imprisonment, I lived alongside people guilty of fraud, robbery, and murder. And every one of them felt like they had a good reason. They saw their actions as reactions. It makes me wonder, how do criminals rationalize their crimes? And how does our justice system justify its response? Is it ever appropriate to treat the guilty like the innocent? This is the truth about true crime. From the Middle Ages through the mid-19th century, it was common in Western Europe to imprison people who were unable to pay their debts. This practice was carried over to the U.S. until it was abolished under federal law in 1833. Despite that, the practice of imprisoning the poor has managed to continue to the present day.
If you wanted to create a system to make people poor and keep them poor, this is the system you would create.
This is a cash cow. These courts are created to provide revenue for the town. This system only affects the poor.
February 2016, Louisiana. 21-year-old Rosie Scott is arrested for stealing $5 worth of food and a tube of toothpaste. He's found guilty and ordered to pay a $450 fine. When he explains he does not have the money, the judge says he can pay $50 to buy more time to get the $450 together. But Scott refuses to pay, and so the judge throws him in jail. Scott's crime was one of desperation. He lived in public housing with his grandmother, and he felt bad about stealing the food. He even went back to apologize to the store owner. Fortunately for him, the Southern Poverty Law Center intervened and sued the city and the judge, who they claimed routinely sent people to jail for inability to pay fines for misdemeanor violations, effectively running a modern-day debtor's prison. The court argued that 20% of their revenue came from these fines, and they could not function without them. But that was the very problem. Relying on fines to pay the bills incentivizes judges to find defendants guilty, fundamentally compromising the impartiality of the court. And what's the court to do? If they can't imprison lawbreakers and can't fine them because they're poor, how is the justice system to deter crime? As one judge in St. Louis put it,
citizens, for the most part, want these courts to pay for themselves. They don't want to raise taxes to pay for it. They want people who violate the law to pay their fines. So we don't believe that because you're poor means you can violate the law.
It's hard to argue that the poor should get free rein to commit petty crime. But what constitutes a crime? As a society, we decide which social ills are handled by law enforcement and which by social workers and hospitals. This classification problem is particularly striking when it comes to homelessness.
2 Shelton police officers are on leave under investigation following the arrest of a homeless man.
Nicholas Heflin was sleeping on the stairwell behind an emergency homeless shelter. Officers had been told to clear that area out if they found anyone sleeping there.
Shelton PD, come down from the stairs. Wake up, man. It's the police department. Show me your hands.
This homeless man's crime? Trespassing outside a church that served as an emergency homeless shelter. In the struggle, he not only got pepper sprayed and tased, but suffered a broken nose. He only wanted a place to sleep, and the Shelton PD gave him one. First, Heflin was taken to a hospital bed, and then to a metal bunk in the Mason County Jail. A month after the incident, one of his eyes still showed blood trauma from the assault. The officers were fired from the Shelton Police Department, but ultimately faced no charges. In a case like this, it seems like the hammer of the law is simply the wrong tool. But when the public's safety is endangered, there must be consequences, right? In Milwaukee, a judge found himself facing this question when a man named Corey Phillips was charged with retail theft and eluding an officer.
We have an individual that's been coming into our store and stealing merchandise. I wonder if there's just an officer that could possibly come to this location.
Phillips had attempted to steal about $200 worth of cologne and perfume from a Marshall's department store. When confronted by police outside, he tried to escape.
I drew my firearm. I ordered him to stop. I yelled, "Stop, police." The vehicle was then placed in a drive, and Mr. Phillips drove the vehicle at me.
When Phillips tried to flee, he nearly hit an officer, and the police decided to give chase.
That one, they tried to run me over.
Cell found at the 83.8, approaching 100.
That led to a 100-mile-an-hour pursuit down I-43, which ended when Phillips crashed while trying to turn. In court, Phillips asked forgiveness, saying it was an act of desperation, even presenting a letter apologizing to the officer he nearly hit.
The situation I put myself in, I apologize for it. I know it was wrong. It was just the mindset of what my family was going through.
According to a criminal complaint, Phillips had a warrant out for his arrest from prior offenses, which may have prompted him to risk it all and run. It was a gamble that would ultimately cost him his freedom.
We've been focused on stealing instead of getting a job and working and setting a good example for these young kids that you had a great opportunity with, and instead, here we are.
The judge sentenced Phillips to 7.5 years in prison, less for the $200 theft than for the ensuing high-speed chase that endangered the public's safety. But what role do the police have in causing that danger? In Milwaukee, after a policy relaxing a restriction on high-speed pursuits went into effect, police chased fleeing drivers 940 times in 2018 alone. 25% of those chases ended in a crash. The choice to pursue a fleeing driver always creates a risk to public safety. Was that $200 theft worth the risk? It seems our court system and law enforcement are simply ill-equipped to handle crimes of poverty. They end up locking away people who can't pay their fines, abusing those who just need a place to sleep, and throwing harsh sentences at minor offenders. But there are other ways of dealing with desperate lawbreakers. When 7-Eleven store owner Jay Singh caught someone shoplifting, he confronted the customer and asked him,
"Why are you doing it?" He said, "I'm hungry. I'm stealing it from myself and my younger brother." I said, "You need food? I'll give you food."
Or look what happened when the NYPD were called to a Whole Foods when a woman was caught with stolen food in her bag.
When she told the officers she was hungry and had no money, these cops didn't march her off to jail. Oh no. They marched her right up to the checkout counter. They reached into their own pockets and they paid her $30 bill. Look at her, overwhelmed.
And some cities are creating diversionary programs like Project Reset, which expands the options available to police and prosecutors. Instead of fines or jail, they can divert minor offenders away from the court system through community-based programming, giving them the opportunity to avoid a trial and criminal record altogether. These programs are more proportionate, restorative, and effective at lowering recidivism than the traditional model. Poverty is a problem, especially when it leads desperate people to commit minor crimes. But law enforcement and criminal prosecution turn out to be a poor tool for dealing with this problem. But is it really okay to let criminals avoid punishment just because they're poor? Is it right that law-abiding citizens should pay for a court system to deal with lawbreakers? Is there a principle at play here? That if you do the crime, you do the time, no matter who you are? Or does true justice need to reflect the circumstances that people find themselves in, often through no fault of their own? Let me know in the comments, and follow or subscribe so you don't miss the next episode of The Truth About True Crime.